welcome back to Awkward Annie Comics. My name's Rachel and I'm the face behind the comics. I said in my last video that my next one I was planning to do would be a quick basic tutorial for Procreate, so if you've never used it before or if you've downloaded it and you're not sure how to go about it, then stick around and I'll give you some basic tips on how to get started. Procreate is a paid app. I think it was about £6 when I bought it. I'm not sure if it's gone up, but for the capabilities within the app you can do so much with it and it is definitely worth it. This is not sponsored or affiliated with Procreate in any way. It is just the app that I use and have always used, so I'm going to show you how to use it. I've also used Adobe Sketch, which I think is still free. That's also a good app to use if you're not sure what you want to do or where you want to go with it, so that's a good place to start. There's still a lot you can do within the app as well. I use an iPad Pro and an Apple Pencil, which are fairly expensive. Of course you can use any other tablet, any other pencil, any other brand, it will work just fine. There's a lot of drawing apps out there as well, so just do your research before you spend any money if you're thinking of drawing digitally, whether it's through Procreate or through another app. Do a bit of research first. So I'm just going to show you the basics of Procreate, how to open a document, how to change the size, whether you want it to be Instagram size or whether you want screen size, YouTube size, and then I'll go a bit more depth into the app on the different layers and the different pencils, how to select colours, all the basic things like that I'm going to cover today. This is the home screen of Procreate, so this is what you'll see when you open up the app. It shows all my comics in chronological order. So you've got some recent comics that have been on Instagram. I've done some headers for social media as well. And in the top right you've got Select, Import, Photo and Plus. And if you tap Select, it'll allow you to select different pieces of work. And you can either stack, preview, share, duplicate or delete them. So you just tap on one of those and decide what you want to do with that. Next is Import, so you can import documents or different photos you might want to edit. And that one will allow you to take a photo as well if you tap Photo. And the plus symbol in the top right, that is where you can select a new blank canvas. You can create your own size by tapping this here. That will allow you to put the dimensions in. And you can select from any number of preset sizes here, or you can create your own and save those sizes. So let's just go into a square Instagram post as an example. So to zoom in and zoom out, as you usually would, just use 2 fingers and pinch the screen. In the top right you've got the paintbrush select tool, the smudge tool, the eraser, the layers and the colour selector. So in the paintbrushes, in this brush library you've got a lot of different brush settings to play around with. A lot of these, in fact the majority of these, are already built into Procreate. So you can see you've got sketching, there's different kind of pencils, inking, different pens, brush pens, you've got calligraphy pens, different drawing materials, painting, so you've got different types of paint. There's loads more down here that'll give you a load of different textures. A lot of things to play around with, and you can also import your own. So that is the brush library. If we select one here, if we just go to inking and then Studio Pen for example, within that you can play around with the different properties of the individual brush, but I'll go into that another time. So if you select a brush, that will allow you to draw with that brush type. On the left here you can select the size of the brush, that goes from 1% all the way up to 100. Here you've got the opacity, and that goes from 1% all the way up to 100 as well. So you can see the difference between the different opacities there. This is undo and redo. Undo at the top and redo at the bottom. This little square in the middle is the colour selector. So if you tap that, this little circle selector will pop up, and you can drag that to whichever colour you want to select. So this one here is selecting the bright red that I used for this line. Next to the paintbrush tool is the smudge tool. It's pretty self-explanatory. That will smudge whatever you've drawn. Again, you can increase the size and the opacity. Next to that is the eraser tool. Again, works in a similar way to the paintbrushes. You can select what kind of brush you want to erase with. And then you've got the size and opacity again at the side here. So you just use it in the same way as you would the paintbrushes. And next to that you've got your layers tab. So to create a new layer, you tap the little plus symbol in the corner and that will create a new blank layer. Layers are useful especially if you're doing a more in-depth drawing. If you're doing simple drawings, comics like myself, it's more useful if you're doing, say, an outline. And then you'd select a new layer, and let's say a new colour, and you wanted to do, colour inside the circle, for example, but you want the outline to show on top of it. You create a new layer, hold down on the blank layer, and then drag it underneath your outline, and you can then colour underneath it. And that's without going over the lines. So that's one reason, or one way you could use layers. It's also useful if you want to move different layers around. So say if you wanted to move the outline to somewhere but leave a block of colour somewhere else. This is the move tool, this little arrow here. So if you select the layer you want to move, tap the little arrow, and that will move on its own. So instead of doing everything on one layer, split them into layers just in case. Or if you know you want to move it, they're always useful. Next to that you've got the select tool. So you can draw around a part that you want to move. So if you select your circle layer, say if you wanted to move only half the circle, you tap the select tool, select half the circle, and then tap move. So you can move that any way you like. Next to the select tool you've got the adjustments. So they're kind of like filters you can use to apply to your different layers, and you can play around with the hue, saturation, brightness and colour balance in here, which will all mess around with the colours for you. And here you've got the actions tab, where you'll find all the settings. So here you can add files, photos, or you can take a photo if you wanted to edit something or draw on top of something to practice in Procreate. You could also insert a photo to use as a reference, that you could insert one and have it in the top corner so you can draw from it. This is also where you add text. So it'll automatically pop up with a text box with just the word text in it. And if you tap edit style, you can change that to a number of fonts that are already in the app. There's quite a lot to choose from there, or you can import your own. And there's the usual different settings in this text tab here that you can play with. You've got the positioning, underlining, outlining, and capitalize. And again, that will bring you into a different layer. It's a separate text layer, so you can move that around freely without disturbing your other layers. In the top right corner here you've got the colour selector. So if you tap that, it'll come up with the colour disc. This is the one I usually use, I find it the easiest to select colour. So around the edge you've got all your colours to choose from. If you wanted to go for a bright pink, you'd select the colour of pink that you want, and then you can choose the sort of brightness and saturation of it here. And it goes all the way down to black at the bottom, and the whites in the top left. So for a bright pink, you'd go all the way to that top corner. And there's a few different ways of selecting colours here. You've got the classic, the harmony and the value, where you can insert your own hex number there if you already know what colour you want. And you can also create your own palettes, just so it's easier, so you don't have to keep selecting colours all the time. You can actually save them within your own palettes. So just going back to the layers very quickly, you can move these around quite freely by holding them down and dragging if you wanted them in a different order. You can make them visible and invisible by tapping the little checkbox there. And if you tap it, you can rename it, which makes it easier if you've got a lot of layers. You can select, copy, mask. You can also merge them together as well. So that would merge those two layers together. You can merge as many as you want, and you can also combine them into a group. So if you wanted to move specific shapes around without combining them into one layer, you just make them a group, and that you can move them around freely together as well. And you can also select them individually. So when we're back to the home screen of Procreate, I can go into one of my recent comics and just show you how the layers work in this one. So if I tap layers, this is the first image of the comic, so I grouped all of these layers, all the different components of this comic into this group, so I could easily make them visible and invisible. So I've got different shapes here, I've got different outlines, and the head, the shadowing, main blocks of colouring. This was a copy and paste from an older comic, and I just used it for reference. So that's underneath there, invisible. And then if I make the second part of the comic visible, you'll see all these different layers here, all the different text layers, and the different colouring and outlines as well. So that's one way of doing a comic that has different parts to it. You can also do it in separate canvases as well. So that is about it for the basic Procreate tutorial. Next time I can go into more details of the different settings of the brushes and a few of these other settings that I haven't been through yet. So that's about it for this video covering the basics of Procreate. I'll do another video soon on more in-depth techniques of the app, and we'll go from there. Thanks for watching.